Welcome. Tonight, we invite you to close your eyes and let go of the hurried rush of the day. This is not a tale of frantic adventure or ticking clocks. This is a story for those who long for a gentler rhythm. This is the unhurried history of telling time. In the world we live in, every second is counted, every minute is a race. But time itself is not in a hurry. It is always moved at its own patient pace. Tonight, we will journey through history to discover the most beautiful and unhurried clocks of all. From the first shadow of the sun to the silent rhythm of the stars, let the quiet story of time guide you to a place of rest. Settle in, breathe deeply, and allow your mind to slow down. Our journey is about to begin. The story begins in the vast, unbroken stillness before dawn. It's a quietness so profound it feels less like an absence of sound and more like a gentle, heavy blanket laid over the world. The air is cool and smells of damp earth, of sleeping leaves, and of something ancient and forgotten. The world is formless, a single shade of deep, velvety black. There are no lines, no edges, only a soft, impenetrable void. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the first change begins. Not with a bang or a flash, but with a softening. At the very edge of the eastern horizon, the black begins to dilute. It isn't a change you can see if you look directly at it. It's a change you feel in the stillness of the air, a sense that the world is holding its breath. The deep black becomes a charcoal gray, and then, the horizon's lowest point, a thin, almost invisible line of pearl white appears. It's the first moment of the day. Time, which seemed to be standing still, has just begun its patient, unhurried march. This is the very first clock, the slow and steady retreat of night. A person, perhaps a shepherd or a lone traveler, is sleeping on the ground. They're not awake to see this first hint of light, yet their body knows. Their breathing deepens. Their muscles relax into the earth. They are a part of this natural rhythm, a living clock synchronized to the turning of the planet. They have no concept of minutes or hours, only of rest and awakening. For them, time is not a sequence of numbers, but a progression of feelings. The coolness of the night, the gradual warming of the air, internal shift from deep sleep to a lighter, more aware state. As the pearl-white line widens, it begins to blush. A faint rose pink seeps into the gray, painting the lowest clouds. In shades of silent anticipation, it's a color that speaks of a new day, but whispers so softly that it is easy to miss. The world is still asleep. The leaves on the trees are still, the birds are silent, and the sounds of distant life have not yet begun. This is the liminal space, the beautiful and fleeting moment between what was and what is to come. The traveler on the ground begins to stir. A sigh escapes their lips. A hand shifts under their head. They are not awake. Not yet. But their body has received the signal. The inner clock, a timepiece far older than any human invention, has begun its quiet work. The colors on the horizon deepen. The gentle pink gives way to a fiery orange that bleeds upward, illuminating the underside of the highest clouds. Blackness is now truly gone, replaced by a sky of magnificent, shifting watercolors. The trees and hills, once indistinguishable from the sky, now take on a stark silhouette. The world is no longer a void, but a set of shapes, of lines, of definitions. This is the next tick of the great natural clock. The first sounds of the morning begin. A bird, a solitary sparrow, lets out a small, questioning chirp. It is not a song, but a test of the air, a single note that breaks the profound silence. This one sound seems to give permission to all the others. A second bird answers from a nearby tree. The crickets, which had been a steady, rhythmic chorus all night, now fall silent, their work done. The wind, which was still now, stirs a single leaf, and the rustle is audible, a tiny whisper of movement. The traveler's eyes flutter open. First thing they see is not the sun, but the light itself is soft. It's a diffuse glow that paints the world in a new, gentle radiance. They sit up slowly, their bodies still heavy with sleep. They do not think it is 5:30 a.m. They think it is time to be awake. Their entire being has ached for this moment, for the simple, unhurried signal that a new day has begun. They stretch, feeling the coolness of the morning air on their skin. The ground is still cold, but the air is beginning to warm. They have no concept of the Earth's rotation, of the immense cosmic dance that is bringing the sun into view. All they know is that the world has shifted, and with it, their own inner rhythm. And then, it happens. A single, brilliant sliver of light appears on the horizon. It is the sun, the ultimate timepiece. The golden light spreads across the land, transforming the world from shades of gray and orange into a vivid spectrum of color. The leaves are now brilliant green, the flowers vibrant red, the stones on the ground a warm, earthy brown. Every detail that was hidden in the darkness is now revealed. The air begins to feel warmer. The sounds of the world multiply, buzzing. Insect passes by, a bee begins its slow search for pollen. The wind rustles through the grass, and the rustle is a steady, gentle whisper. The world is fully awake, and every element in it, from the smallest insect to the largest tree, is synchronized with the new day. For this lone traveler, time is told by the length of the sun's warmth, by the height of its position in the sky. When the sun is a handspan above the horizon, it is the time of cool dew. When it climbs higher, a time of warmth and activity. When it is at its highest point, a time of rest in the shade. When it begins its slow downward arc, a time for the day's final labors. This is the beginning of timekeeping. Not with numbers or clocks, but with the body's natural response to the world. With the shifting colors of the sky, and with the simple, reliable journey of a quiet, unhurried sun. As the last sliver of golden light recedes from the sky, and the sun dips below the horizon, a new clock emerges. This one is not told by a direct, overwhelming radiance, but by a soft, patient glow. The moon, a timepiece of quiet elegance, takes its place as the sun's gentle opposite. To the ancient eye, the night was not a single, unchanging dark canvas. It was a constantly shifting theater of light and shadow, governed by the moon's silent journey. The moon, with its cyclical dance of waxing and waning, is the first celestial body to offer a clear, repeatable measure of time, longer than a single day. This was a deeper rhythm, a grander pulse that organized the weeks and the months, a slow breath taken by the heavens themselves. Our story begins not with the bright moon, but with its complete absence. Imagine a night when the moon is new, invisible against the deep black of the sky. This is the first chapter of the lunar story. The darkness is absolute, a velvety quiet that allows the stars to glitter with a fierce and brilliant intensity. There is no soft lunar light to dilute their shine. In this profound darkness, early people felt a sense of anticipation, a feeling of beginning. It was the moment of rest before the news cycle, the calm before the slow, radiant return of light. They did not mark this day as day one of the month. They felt it as a profound stillness, the very heart of the night. Then, after 2 or 3 sunrises, the moon returns. It appears not as a full orb, but as a delicate, impossible sliver of light, a thin crescent like a fingernail clipping of pure silver. It hangs low in the western sky just after sunset, a shy and beautiful witness to the day's end. This first crescent was a sign of hope, a gentle promise of light to come. It was a new beginning, a signal to plan for the coming weeks. For a lone traveler, seeing this tiny crescent would bring a quiet sense of comfort and a feeling that the night's long darkness would soon be lit. As the days pass, the sliver thickens. Each evening, the crescent is a little fatter, a little higher in the sky. This is the patient, unhurried time of the waxing moon. The light is still soft and gentle. The shadows cast by this moon are not the hard, dark shadows of the sun, but long, blurry, indistinct pools of gray. They create a world of mystery, where trees are shapeless figures and rocks are silent observers. The land is bathed in a pale, ethereal glow that feels ancient and still. The moon grows until it becomes a perfect half circle. This is the first quarter moon. Now, the moonlight is strong enough to cast a noticeable glow over the landscape. It's a halfway point, a moment of balance. The first half of the lunar month is complete, and the second half, The slow journey toward fullness is about to begin. This was a clear marker for early people. It was a moment for pause, a natural week marker. They didn't need a 7-day calendar. The moon's progress was enough. After the first quarter, the moon swells into a waxing gibbous shape. The nights become progressively brighter. The world is no longer black and white. It is a landscape of shimmering, ghostly grays. Objects become more visible, and travel at night becomes easier. The moonlight is so pervasive that it can even cast a person's shadow, a long, faint silhouette trailing behind them. The feeling is one of gathering energy, of a slow and steady accumulation of light. And then, in a moment of sublime quiet, the moon reaches its fullness. This is the full moon, a perfectly round, luminous disk that floods the world with a light, almost as bright as day. The shadows are sharp and clear. The landscape is transformed, its colors muted to shades of silver and pearl. The feeling is one of completion, of culmination. The full moon was not just a symbol. It was a practical tool. It was the light for nighttime hunting, for long-distance travel, and for grand gatherings. It was a moment for celebration and ritual, a celestial event that brought an end to the darkness. But the full moon does not stay. Like a slow, deep breath, it begins its long, patient exhalation. It begins to wane, to shrink. First, a tiny piece of the brilliant circle seems to be eaten away. This is the waning gibbous phase. The moon still provides a great deal of light, but the feeling of perfection is gone. The journey is now a gentle retreat. It is a time for reflection, for completing tasks, for feeling the cycle drawing to a close. The moon shrinks to a perfect half circle, again the last quarter. This is a mirror image of the first quarter, a final balanced point before the darkness returns. It is a time for a final quiet count, a last check on the end of the month. Finally, the moon becomes a thin, waning crescent, a ghost of its former self. It rises later and later in the night, a silent, tired arc in the early morning sky. It is a final whisper of light before the cycle begins again. For early people, this was a time of rest, of waiting for the new moon and the promise of a new month. The moon, in its patient and unhurried rhythm, was the first calendar. It didn't just tell time, it gave time a narrative, a story of birth, growth, fullness, and quiet retreat. It taught humanity that time was not a straight, unending line, but a beautiful and eternal circle. And in its quiet, constant journey, it provided a sense of comfort. A reliable clock hanging in the vast and silent sky. While the moon told the story of the month in its patient, cyclical dance, the stars whispered. The narrative of the year. This was a deeper, slower rhythm, a grand cosmic breath that took many moons to unfold. The sky was a vast and ancient map, and the constellations were the silent, unmoving landmarks that guided humanity through the long, slow march of the seasons. Imagine a night so clear and dark that the sky is not just a backdrop for a few bright stars, but a canvas so crowded with light that it feels like a soft, glittering dust. On such a night, ancient observers would look up and see patterns, not just individual points of light. They saw the hunter, the bull, the sisters' familiar figures that held a wisdom far beyond what the fleeting sun or the changing moon could offer. These star pictures, the constellations, were the first long-term clocks. They didn't measure hours or days, but instead, they told the story of the Earth's annual journey. They were patient sentinels, rising and setting in a predictable pattern that signaled the slow, beautiful changes of the world below. Consider the cold stillness of a winter night. The air bites with a crisp chill that makes every breath visible. The ground is hard and unyielding. On such a night, a person looking up would see the giant figure of Orion, the hunter, standing tall and proud above the horizon. His bright belt and shoulders are unmistakable, a brilliant splash of light that seems to challenge the deep cold. His presence was a silent signal. As long as Orion was high in the night sky, it was a time of cold, of long nights, and of patient waiting. He was the gentle clock of winter, his slow passage telling the story of the darkest part of the year. As the weeks and months pass, the sky begins a slow, almost imperceptible shift. The nights grow shorter, and the first hints of warmth return to the air. Orion begins to dip lower and lower, sinking toward the western horizon. He seems to be saying a quiet farewell, and as he sets a new constellation, the tiny cluster of the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, makes its own patient appearance in the morning sky just before dawn. This moment was a profound celestial event for early farmers. The disappearance of the Pleiades from the evening sky and their re-emergence in the pre-dawn hours was a clock that told them it was time to plant the seeds. The soil was ready, the light was returning, and the great work of the season was beginning. The stars were not just beautiful to look at, they were a guide for survival, a timetable for life itself. This unhurried wisdom was told to every generation. A parent would point to the sky and explain to a child that when a certain star was visible in a certain place, it was time to move the flock, or to prepare for the coming rains, or to celebrate the harvest. Time was not a number on a clock face, but a narrative written in light. It was a story of the Great Bear circling the North Star, of the scorpion rising in the summer, of the silent, steady journey of the celestial sphere. The Earth's slow journey around the sun was reflected in the night sky, and the stars were the faithful, unhurried keepers of that journey. They were a universal clock that told a story of rhythms far grander than any human life. The seasons, with their predictable cycles of growth and rest, were not a mystery, but a direct consequence of this patient celestial dance. In a world without calendars, the stars provided a sense of order, a profound feeling of being connected to a larger, more predictable cosmos. They were a reminder that even when the moon was hidden or the sun was too bright, there was always a dependable timepiece waiting to emerge in the quiet stillness of the night. While the sun told the story of the day and the moon and stars told the story of the month and year, there was another more subtle clock for those who lived by the water. This was the clock of the tides, a patient, unhurried rhythm that pulsed through the world's oceans and rivers. For coastal communities, time was not just told by the sky, but also by the quiet, powerful breath of the sea. Imagine the soft murmur of waves at the edge of the land. It is a sound that seems endless, a steady whisper that has spoken for millennia. But to a keen ear and a patient eye, that whisper is not constant. It ebbs and flows in a slow, predictable rhythm. The sea creeps up the beach, covering the smooth rocks and leaving a shimmering line of foam. This is the high tide. Then, just as patiently, it retreats, revealing the wet, glistening sand and the creatures that burrow within it. This gentle rising and falling of the water, a quiet dance that takes place over many hours, was a clock for a different kind of life. The tide clock was not for telling the time of day, but for knowing the time for work, for travel, and for rest. A fisherman would know that when the water was at its lowest, it was time to collect the shellfish that were suddenly exposed on the rocks. A traveler would know to wait for the high tide to bring their boat into the shallow harbor. For these people, the most important moments of the day were not at a specific hour, but at the culmination of the ocean's slow, predictable rhythm. This tidal clock was a direct conversation between the moon and the earth. The tides were and are a physical response to the moon's gentle gravitational pull. A particularly high tide, or a very low one, was a direct signal that the moon was either full or new. It was a beautiful, tangible example of the celestial clock of the moon being expressed on the earthly plane. The moon's phases were reflected in the daily rise and fall of the sea, a perfect harmony between sky and water. The experience of this time was deeply sensory. It was the feeling of wet sand beneath bare feet, of the salt spray in the air, and the deep, rhythmic whoosh of the waves on the shore. It was the quiet anticipation of watching a distant sandbar slowly emerge from the water, knowing that the time for foraging was at hand. It was a rhythm that connected a person directly to the natural world, a form of timekeeping that was felt in the body as much as it was understood in the mind. Unlike a sundial or a candle clock, the tidal clock was not about numbers or marks. It was about a state of being. The world was either in a state of high tide or a state of low tide. The time in between was a slow, unhurried flow, a transition that took hours and was measured in the quiet, steady retreat or advance of the water's edge. This clock teaches a different kind of patience. It is the patience of knowing that the water will eventually return, that what has receded will come back, and that the world operates on a rhythm far grander and more powerful than human will. For coastal people, time was not something to be controlled or hurried. It was something to be respected and flowed with. Before the sun was a clock, before the moon was a calendar, and before the tides were a rhythm, there was a timepiece within us all. It was the human body, an ancient, silent instrument that kept its own time, synchronized not with a turning gear or a falling shadow, but with the very pulse of life itself. This was the most intimate of all timepieces, a biological clock that spoke not in minutes or hours, but in feelings and sensations. The story of this clock begins not with light, but with the deep, dreamless quiet of sleep. Imagine a person, a hunter or a forager, lying on the cool earth, completely unaware of the world outside. They are not counting hours. They are in a state of timeless rest. But even in this profound stillness, the body is at work. It is healing, it is dreaming, and it is silently preparing for the coming day. It knows without a single external sign that the sun will soon rise and a new cycle will begin. This internal knowledge is the first tick of the human clock. As the first faint hint of gray softens the eastern sky, the body responds. It's a gentle, almost imperceptible shift. The deep sleep gives way to a lighter state. The breathing, which was slow and rhythmic, begins to quicken slightly. The muscles, which were limp and heavy, tense in a subtle preparation for movement. This awakening is not a sudden jolt, but a slow, unhurried unfolding. A quiet and private sunrise that happens within the mind and body. The mind does not think it is morning. It feels it is time to wake up. This clock tells time not with numbers, but with needs. The feeling of hunger is a perfect timepiece. It marks the passage of hours since the last meal, a low rumble in the stomach that tells a person it is time to seek food. It is a biological timer for a fundamental need, a patient and reliable signal that has guided us for millennia. Hunter knows it is time to set out on a search for game when their stomach begins its insistent call. A forager knows to look for berries when their internal clock tells them their energy is low. The ebb and flow of energy throughout the day is also a function of this clock. In the morning, there is a feeling of freshness and vigor, and natural. A surge of energy that makes it the best time for hard labor. At midday, as the sun is at its highest, there is often a feeling of heat and a desire for rest, a time to seek shade and relax. This is a natural, unhurried break built into our very biology. As the sun begins its slow descent, the body's energy begins to wane, a gentle winding down that prepares it for the quiet work of evening. The final, and perhaps most important, telling of time by the body is the pull of sleep. As the last light fades from the sky, a feeling of deep, bone-weary tiredness sets in. The eyes feel heavy, the muscles ache, and the mind drifts. This is a powerful, undeniable command from the internal clock. It is a slow, methodical preparation for another night of rest, another journey into the world of dreams. The body knows it is time to surrender, to let go of the day and begin the slow, rejuvenating work of the night. It is a feeling so profound that no clock, no matter how precise, can compete with it. This human clock is a testament to our connection to the natural world. For generations, we have lived by its silent commands. It is a rhythm that we carry with us even today, a deep and ancient knowledge that tells us when to wake, when to eat, and when to rest. It reminds us that before we created tools to measure time, we were ourselves the truest and most reliable timekeepers. The first human-made timepieces were not complex machines of gears and springs, but simple, elegant creations of stone and shadow. After eons of following the body's internal clock and the moon's quiet phases, humanity took the first step toward consciously capturing time. They created the sundial, a a silent and humble instrument that relied on the most ancient clock of all, the sun itself. Imagine a world where time was a feeling, not a number. Then a person with a sense of quiet observation had an idea. They noticed that a tree's shadow was long in the morning, grew short as the sun climbed high, and stretched long again in the afternoon. What if this natural phenomenon could be made still, fixed, and readable? The sundial was born from this simple realization. The making of a sundial was a patient, meditative process. It began not with a frantic effort to save time, but with a peaceful interaction with the earth. A flat stone was chosen, smooth and wide, and a no manna simple. Upright stick or a triangular piece of metal was placed in its center. The carver would then spend an entire day marking the stone, patiently etching a line for every hour as the gnomon's shadow crept along its surface. This process was a lesson in itself, a slow and deliberate act of mapping the sun's journey onto the physical world. The sundial's existence was a lesson in humility. It taught that time was not to be rushed. It was a consequence of the sun's patient journey across the sky. The sundial's face was useless on a cloudy day, forcing people to return to the rhythms of the natural world, to the feelings in their bodies, or to the slow drip of a water clock, if they had one. It was a tool that worked only when the heavens were clear, a timepiece that reminded people of their place in the grand cosmic order. A sundial was often a quiet gathering place. People would come to the central square of a village, a temple, courtyard, or a garden to look at the silent, steady shadow. They didn't see an exact minute. They saw a broad passage of time. The shadow's position might mean morning prayers or midday rest or time to return home. The sundial spoke in chapters, not in sentences. It was not a frantic race against the clock, but a calm and simple confirmation of where one was in the journey of the day. The visual of a sundial is itself unhurried. The shadow is not a frantic hand. It is a slow, creeping line that seems to barely move. You have to watch it for a long time to see it change. This forces a different kind of observation, one that values patience over speed. In a world with a sundial, you did not hurry to be on time. You simply were in the flow of time. This clock, the first step in a long journey of human invention, teaches us that the best timekeepers are often the simplest ones. It is a testament to the elegant truth that some of the most profound ideas come from a quiet observation of the most obvious things, like a shadow and a stone. The sundial was a timepiece of light and shadow, but it was a fair-weather friend. It fell silent with the setting sun and on days when clouds gathered, leaving the world to rely once more on the uncertain rhythms of the body and the sky. To solve this problem, humanity created a new kind of clock, one powered by a different element, and it spoke with a sound of quiet, endless patience. This was the water clock, or clepsydra, a humble device of dripping water that brought the art of timekeeping into the night and into the home. Imagine a vessel, perhaps a simple clay pot, with a tiny, carefully crafted hole at its bottom. Below it sits another vessel, ready to catch the water. The art of this clock was in the stillness and the painstaking precision required to ensure that the water dripped at a perfectly constant rate. The narrative should focus on this act of quiet creation, the meticulous work of the craftsman who shaped the clay and sized the hole, knowing that the accuracy of the clock depended on this one unhurried detail. The sound of the water clock was its most powerful feature. Unlike the silent shadow of the sundial, this clock spoke. It was not a loud, frantic ticking, but a soft, rhythmic drip, drip, drip. This sound was a constant, soothing presence in a room, a gentle and unending whisper that marked the hours. It was the first time that a steady beat, a predictable rhythm, could be heard and followed in the dead of night. For those who lived by its sound, the darkness was no longer a vast, formless void. It was punctuated by the regular, calming voice of the water. This was a clock that taught a different kind of lesson. The sundial taught us to move with the sun. The water clock taught us to move with a steady, unyielding flow. As the hours passed, the water level in the lower vessel would rise, its surface marked with lines that corresponded to the passage of time. A scholar might watch the level creep upward, a farmer might check it to know when to wake for the early market, and a lonely guard might find comfort in its ceaseless, patient drip throughout the long, dark hours. The water clock was a first step toward internalizing time, bringing it indoors and making it a part of our daily lives, independent of the external world. It was a testament to human ingenuity, the ability to harness a simple element and a fundamental force, gravity. To measure something as abstract as time was a powerful tool, yet it remained a quiet one, a gentle and unhurried companion that spoke only of its constant, patient work. The water clock was a vessel of continuous flow, but for many, time was not meant to be endless. It was meant to be contained, focused, and purposeful. This need led to the creation of the sandglass, or hourglass, a timepiece of elegant simplicity that used the gentle, unhurried fall of sand to measure a specific, defined period. It was a clock designed not to tell all of time, but to tell just a small, meaningful piece of it. Imagine the quiet, focused work of a craftsman creating an hourglass. It begins with two clear glass bulbs, their necks joined by a narrow passage. But the most critical element is the sand itself. It isn't just any sand, it must be perfectly fine, clean, and dry, able to flow with absolute consistency. The narrative should focus on this meticulous preparation, the patient sifting and drying, the quiet dedication to getting the material just right. This is an act of love for unhurried precision, deep understanding that the integrity of the clock depends on the unhindered flow of each single tiny grain. Once the sand is sealed within the glass, the clock is ready. There is no sound, no moving parts other than the sand itself. The magic is entirely visual. The sandglass is a silent and mesmerizing witness to the passage of time. The steady stream of sand trickling from the top bulb to the bottom is a peaceful, hypnotic sight. It feels less like time passing and more like a quiet waterfall of moments. A patient and constant journey. You can watch it for minutes, and it never seems to rush. Each grain falls in its turn, a tiny individual commitment to the whole. This kind of clock was used for specific purposes, and the chapter's narrative should reflect this. A speaker might turn an hourglass over to begin a sermon, its flow a silent reminder to be concise. A chef might use one to ensure a dish is cooked perfectly, watching the grains fall in a patient countdown. In a courtroom, an hourglass might be used to time an argument, its elegant fall a quiet contrast to the heated words. The sandglass brought a sense of focused time to a specific task, creating a brief, self-contained world where only the falling sand mattered. The sandglass also held a powerful, symbolic meaning. When a journey was complete, the sand was at rest. To begin again, the hourglass had to be turned over, a deliberate act that brought the past and future together. It was a physical and beautiful metaphor for the cyclical nature of time, reminding us that every end is a new beginning waiting to happen. The sandglass taught that some moments are meant to be experienced in full, from start to finish, and that their value lies in the unhurried journey, not just the final result. The hourglass measured time with a gentle cascade, but there was another timepiece that spoke with a more intimate living flame. This was the candle clock, a simple and beautiful invention that brought a soft glow to the art of timekeeping. It was a clock for the quiet hours of the night, for solitary study, and for the patient watch. It told time not with a number, but with the slow, unhurried act of burning. Imagine a tall, white candle, smooth and perfect. A meticulous hand has etched or painted horizontal lines onto its surface, marking each hour. The narrative should focus on this act of quiet precision, the careful measuring and marking that transforms a simple object into a timepiece. The candle's purpose is not to burn as fast as possible, but to burn with a measured, consistent grace. Once lit, the candle clock comes to life. Its flame is a tiny, flickering heart that breathes in the stillness of the room. It casts long, dancing shadows on the walls and fills the air with a faint, clean smell of melting wax. This is a sensory timepiece, a clock that is felt and smelled as much as it is seen. The passage of time is no longer a silent shadow or a falling grain. It is the quiet, gentle shrinking of the candle's body as the wax slowly gives way to the flame. This clock was often a companion to the lonely. Scholar in a quiet room, poring over ancient texts, might look up and see that the flame has now passed the third mark, and the night is half gone. A watchman, sitting in the deep dark, might watch the candle's flame patiently shrink. A silent reassurance that the hours are indeed passing, even when the world outside is completely still. For these people, the candle clock was a living friend, a small light in the darkness that quietly and with profound certainty confirmed the passage of time. The beauty of the candle clock was in its simplicity and its powerful symbolism. The melting wax was a visual metaphor for the fleeting nature of time, but the unhurried pace of the melt taught a lesson of patience. It reminded people that life, like the candle, must be consumed in its own time, with a gentle, steady grace. There was no hurrying the process. You could only watch as the hours burned away. This clock, born of fire and light, brought a warmth and a gentle rhythm to the measurement of time. It proved that even in the quietest, darkest moments, there was a beautiful, living light that could tell the story of the hours. The sun, the moon, and even a humble candle could tell the time. But for the most accurate and far-reaching measurements, humanity had to return to the heavens with a different purpose. This was not the simple observation of a traveler, but the patient, methodical work of the astronomer. In ancient observatories, often little more than carefully aligned stones or a stepped pyramid, the art of timekeeping became a scholarly, sacred pursuit. It was here that time was not just told, but meticulously charted, its grand, unhurried arc mapped across generations. Imagine a clear, silent night on a high hill. The air is crisp and cool, and the only sound is the quiet rustle of a robe and the soft clink of a stylus on a clay tablet. An astronomer, a solitary figure with a deep and quiet patience, sits with their instruments. They are not looking at a single celestial body, but at the entire, vast canvas of the night sky. The work is not for a single day or a single month, but for a lifetime. It is the patient, deliberate act of noting the position of a star on a certain night of the year, and then doing it again and again and again. The purpose of these observatories was to find a timepiece so grand and so reliable that it could govern all others. The sun, while consistent, had small variations in its path. The moon, while beautiful, had a complex and shifting orbit. But the vast stellar patterns, the quiet, predictable drift of the constellations across the seasons, provided a clock of immense and unyielding certainty. The narrative should focus on this pursuit of cosmic perfection, the careful triangulation of a distant star, the meticulous marking of a planet's path, the long nights of waiting and observation. This was a kind of timekeeping that required a deep reverence for the unhurried. An astronomer might spend years observing the sky before they could predict a solar eclipse or a seasonal shift with absolute confidence.
The knowledge was accumulated,
Slowly passed down from teacher to student with a profound sense of its importance. This was not just about telling time for the sake of it. It was about understanding the very order of the universe. It was a practice that linked the fleeting lives of people to the eternal, unmoving dance of the stars. The astronomers and their observatories were the first to build a societal clock. Their work gave rise to the precise calendars that allowed for the planning of large-scale agriculture, the timing of religious festivals, and the synchronization of communal life. They were the patient custodians of time, ensuring that the human world stayed in harmony with the cosmos. And they did it all without a single gear or spring, relying only on their quiet, unwavering attention to the most beautiful and ancient clock of all. For thousands of years, time was measured by the natural world, by the sun, the moon, the tides, and the patient flow of water and sand. But in the quiet halls of monasteries and the workshops of medieval Europe, a new kind of timepiece was born. It was a clock made not of stone or water, but of metal, gears, and a revolutionary idea. This was the first mechanical clock, and its rhythm was not a drip or a fall, but a quiet rhythmic click. Imagine the world holding its breath, waiting for this moment. A craftsman, a lonely figure working in the solitude of a forge, is not. Thinking of the future, he is thinking only of his task. To create a device that could measure time without the sun's shadow or a constant flow of water. Masterpiece is the escapement, a tiny, ingenious mechanism that is the beating heart of every mechanical clock. It is a series of levers and gears that catches and releases a cog, allowing it to turn forward in a slow, controlled, and perfectly regular motion. The narrative of this chapter should focus on this simple, profound act. The craftsman wins. The clocks wait, a heavy mass of lead or stone, and for the first time, a sound echoes in the room. It is a tiny, delicate, and perfect click, followed by a pause, and then another, and another. This is the birth of mechanical rhythm. It is a sound so regular, so constant, and so precise that it feels like the very pulse of order itself. This clock does not stop at night or on a cloudy day. Its quiet rhythm continues, a testament to human ingenuity and a new kind of mastery over time. The gears of these early clocks were huge and heavy, made of iron or brass. They turned with a slow, deliberate grace, their teeth interlocking in a patient, powerful dance. The sound of their movement was a quiet hum, a deep and steady groan that underscored the gentle clicking of the escapement. This was a timepiece that was less about a single moment and more about a continuous, unhurried presence. It was a slow-moving, ponderous giant that lived in a tower or a town square, a communal clock that everyone could hear but few could touch. The invention of the mechanical clock was not a single dramatic event, but a series of quiet experiments, each a small step forward in the quest for precision. It was a time when the concept of time was slowly, deliberately, and unhurriedly separated from the natural world and placed into the patient, masterful hands of humanity. And it all began with that single, quiet click, a sound that would eventually come to define the modern world. The first mechanical clocks were a marvel, but their timekeeping was still rough, a series of imperfect clicks and groans. They were the first step, but not the final word. The true heart of the accurate mechanical clock, its steady and reliable soul, was a simple idea born from quiet observation, the pendulum. It was the gentle swing of a weighted arm, and it would bring a new level of precision and unhurried grace to the measurement of time. Imagine a mind at rest, not working, but simply observing the world. The story of the pendulum begins with Galileo, a man watching a lamp swinging from the ceiling of a cathedral. He noticed that no matter how wide the arc, each swing took the same amount of time. It was a perfect, unhurried rhythm, a natural pulse that was more consistent than any human-made device. This observation, so simple and so profound, held the key to a new era of timekeeping. The narrative of this chapter should focus on this singular, beautiful motion. The pendulum is a silent, hypnotizing timepiece in its own right. It's not about the frantic ticking of gears, but the patient, graceful arc of a swinging weight. The long arm swings to one side, pauses for a fraction of a second, and then returns with a slow, deliberate momentum. This rhythmic motion is what made clocks truly accurate for the first time. The clock's gears no longer ran wild. They were now tamed by the slow, perfect tempo of the pendulum. The sound of a pendulum clock is a perfect metaphor for its function. It is a slow, steady, and comforting tick-tock, a deep and resonant sound that speaks of reliability and patience.
Ow.
It's not a hurried whisper, but a reassuring voice in the stillness of a room. This new kind of clock brought a new kind of rhythm to life. The hours were no longer approximate, they were precise. For the first time, people could trust that the time on their clock was the same as the time on their neighbors. The pendulum's gentle swing brought timekeeping into the realm of science and universal truth. It was a tangible expression of a natural law, a beautiful and powerful idea captured in wood and metal. It taught that some of the most profound truths lie in the simplest, most consistent motions, and that the best timekeepers are those that embrace a slow and steady rhythm as clocks grew more precise. They began to leave the solitary tower and the lonely workshop to find a new home in the hearts of families. The pendulum, in its graceful swing, had given time a new kind of accuracy, and it was now housed in a timepiece that was less a machine and more a member of the family. This was the long case clock, affectionately known as the grandfather clock, a tall, silent figure that stood patiently in the hallway, its constant rhythm the gentle heartbeat of a home. Imagine a grand clock, crafted from warm, polished wood, its face a serene circle of brass and white. Its tall, slender case housed the graceful swing of the pendulum, a mesmerizing movement visible through a glass window. The narrative of this chapter should focus on this physical presence, timepiece that commanded respect, not with noise or hurry, but with its dignified stillness. It stood as a pillar of order in the organized chaos of daily life, its quiet ticking a comforting backdrop. To conversations, laughter, and solemn silences, the grandfather clock was a witness to generations. It saw a child take their first steps and a grandparent sit for their final rest. Its steady tick-tock was a constant in a world of change, a rhythm that linked one moment to the next, one year to the next, one life to the next. The chapter should explore this profound emotional connection. For families, the clock was not just a tool for telling the time. It was a living story, a keeper of memories that told the time of life itself. And then there was the chime. The quarter hour, a soft, melodious ring would sound. On the hour, a deep, sonorous strike that filled every room with its voice. It was a beautiful sound, a moment of pause and reflection that broke the quiet. The sound did not command urgency. It announced a gentle passage. The chime was a gentle reminder that an hour had passed, a patient and unhurried confirmation that time was moving on, and with it, life was unfolding. The grandfather clock taught that some of the most important things in life are not the moments of great change, but the simple, consistent rhythms in between. It was a timepiece that stood for stability, for tradition, and for the quiet comfort of a life lived at a natural, unhurried pace. It proved that a clock could be more than a machine, could be a beloved witness to a family's journey through time. For centuries, time was a public affair. It lived in church steeples in the town square and in the grand halls of homes. It was a shared experience, a rhythm for the community. But in the patient, unhurried workshops of brilliant craftsmen, a new idea began to take hold. What if time could be made small enough to be a personal possession? What if it could be carried with you wherever you went? This question led to the creation of the pocket watch, and with it, time became an intimate companion. Imagine the painstaking work required to make such a thing. The narrative should focus on the tiny, almost invisible world of gears, springs, and screws. The craftsman's hands, normally accustomed to the large movements of a clock tower, now work with microscopic tools. The sound of the workshop is not a loud clang, but the soft click of a tiny lever, the gentle scrape of a file against a tiny cog. This is a story about the unhurried patience required to miniaturize an entire universe of time and fit it into a small, elegant case. The first pocket watches were marvels of both engineering and art. Their faces were often works of beauty. With intricate carvings and delicate hands, the case was smooth and cool, a polished metal oval that fit perfectly into the palm of a hand. The true magic, however, was inside. When held up to the ear, you could hear the quietest tick-tock, a whisper of time that belonged to you and you alone. It was a sound that told you, in a private, silent way, that the minutes and hours were indeed passing.
This was a quiet revolution.
Time was no longer something you had to walk to the town square to see. It was with you in your pocket, ready to be revealed with a simple, personal gesture. It changed our relationship with time from one of shared observance to one of individual management. You could now time your own journey, your own meeting, or your own moment of rest without relying on a distant clock. The pocket watch became a symbol of a new era. It was a sign of status and a testament to the unhurried progress of human ingenuity. It taught us that a clock could be more than just a tool. It could be an heirloom, a precious object passed down through generations. And in its small, quiet presence, it reminded us that even in a portable form, time's most fundamental nature is still a steady, unhurried rhythm while the pocket watch brought time into the hands of individuals. A much larger problem was plaguing the world. Out on the vast, unhurried oceans, sailors were lost. They could easily determine their latitude by looking at the North Star. But their position east or west their longitude was a complete mystery. An inaccurate measurement of longitude meant a ship could be lost for weeks, run aground on a distant coast, or never return at all. The solution to this immense problem lay not in the stars, but in a clock so perfect that it could keep time on a rocking ship in the middle of a storm. This chapter tells the story of one man, John Harrison, a carpenter and self-taught clockmaker. In his patient, lifelong quest to build this clock, the narrative should focus on his unwavering dedication. Over 40 years, Harrison worked in quiet seclusion, building one clock after another. He did not rush, for he knew that the ocean would punish any imperfection. His first designs were enormous, clunky creations, but with each iteration, they grew more compact and more precise. His patience was as profound as the ocean itself. He solved problems of friction, rust, and temperature, creating a series of revolutionary timepieces that were as much art as they were science. The narrative should take you on a journey with his clocks. Imagine the first test run, a ship sailing from England to the Caribbean. The captain has a small clock, Harrison's masterpiece, tucked away safely below deck. The hours tick by, the ship rolls and pitches, and the salty air fills the cabin. But the clock's quiet rhythm remains steady and true. When the ship finally arrives, the clock's time is compared to the local time, and the difference reveals the ship's exact longitude. For the first time in history, a captain knew exactly where he was. Harrison's final chronometer, the H4, was a masterpiece of patient ingenuity. It was a beautiful, small pocket watch, but its heart was a labyrinth of mechanisms designed to withstand the violent motion of the sea. This small clock saved countless lives and made global trade and exploration possible. It was not a fast revolution. It was the slow, unhurried culmination of a single man's obsession with a perfect, constant rhythm. It proved that a clock could be more than a measure of time. It could be a measure of human courage and a beacon of hope in a world of uncertainty. For all the centuries of invention, from the sundial to the pocket watch, time remained a deeply personal and local affair. Every village and every town had its own time, set by the sun's position in its own sky. When a clock read noon in London, it was not noon in Bristol. This was a quiet, unhurried system that worked perfectly for a world that moved at the pace of a horse. But then, with a hiss of steam and a clang of iron wheels, a new invention began to connect the world at a speed never before imagined. The railroad arrived, and the comfortable chaos of local time was suddenly a dangerous problem. Imagine a world where every station along a train's journey had its own unique time. A train schedule would be a nightmare of calculations. A train leaving at noon from one city might arrive in another at 12:15, but that second city's noon was at a different time, making the schedule confusing and dangerous. The narrative of this chapter should focus on this new sense of urgency, the need for a clock that could unite the country, not just a single home or a single city. The solution came not from a new kind of clock, but from a new kind of agreement. Clockmakers, railway companies, and governments began to realize that for a fast world, time had to be slow and standardized. The narrative should detail this patient process of negotiation and consensus. It wasn't a sudden change, but a gradual, unhurried adoption of a system that made logical sense. The world was divided into time zones, and every clock within that zone was set to the same agreed-upon time. For the first time, time became a public good. It was no longer based on the sun's position, but on a silent, global consensus. On the day that a nation adopted standard time, millions of people quietly reset their clocks, a simple, unhurried act that brought a new level of order to the world. It was a change that brought people closer together, making it possible to predict a journey across an entire continent with a single, clear timetable. The world, which had once been a patchwork of separate rhythms, was now marching to the same patient, unified beat. The railroad, though a fast and powerful invention, was the catalyst for an unhurried revolution in time. It taught us that as our world grew more interconnected, our understanding of time had to become more organized, more patient, and more universal. For centuries, clocks had been loud and proud. They ticked, they talked, they chimed, and they swung their pendulums with visible, methodical grace. But as the world moved into the age of electricity, a new kind of clock was born. One that was silent and precise. This was the quartz crystal clock, and its unhurried rhythm was not a visible movement, but an invisible electrical pulse, a gentle hum at the heart of millions of timepieces. Imagine a tiny, clear, unassuming crystal. It seems inert, a simple piece of rock, but within its structure lies a powerful, hidden rhythm. When an electric current is passed through it, the quartz crystal vibrates at an astonishingly precise and constant frequency. The narrative of this chapter should focus on this unseen wonder, on the magical transformation of a simple stone into a beating heart of time. It's a story of quiet elegance, where all the gears and springs of the past are replaced by a single, unmoving, reliable pulse. The invention of the quartz clock was a quiet revolution. It didn't announce itself with a loud chime or a grand mechanism. It slipped into every home, every car, and every wrist in the form of a small battery-powered device. Its silence was its power. You could no longer hear the seconds tick by. They simply passed a seamless, unhurried flow of moments. The need for winding was gone. The need for human intervention was gone. The clock simply worked, a patient and constant presence in the background of life. The contrast between the old and the new was profound. The mechanical clock was a testament to human art and skill, its every tick a small, visible effort. A quartz clock was a testament to a new kind of magic, a silent, invisible science that was both deeply complicated and profoundly simple. It brought an unprecedented level of accuracy to everyday life. No longer would your watch be a few minutes slow, its time would be nearly perfect, a constant, unhurried truth that you could rely on. This clock taught a new lesson, that some of the most powerful rhythms are those that are silent and invisible. It made time a ubiquitous, yet often unappreciated, constant in our lives. It reminded us that the art of timekeeping was not just in the visible, but in the unseen, silent pulse that governs our modern world. For all the unhurried progress of clocks, from the slow drip of water to the silent pulse of a quartz crystal, there was one final leap to be made. It was a leap from a clock powered by human-made rhythm to a clock powered by the most fundamental, unchanging rhythm in the universe, the vibration of an atom. This was the birth of the atomic clock, a timepiece so precise that it would not lose a single second for millions of years. It was the moment humanity found time's ultimate, unshakable pulse. Imagine a single atom, a tiny invisible speck of matter that is the building block of everything. The narrative of this chapter should focus on the profound, almost spiritual. The idea that this atom is not still, it is in a state of constant, unwavering vibration, a perfect, unhurried rhythm that is the same everywhere in the universe. Scientists, with a patience far greater than any ancient astronomer, discovered how to harness this vibration. By using a beam of light, they could count these vibrations with absolute certainty, creating a clock that was more reliable than the sun itself. The sound of an atomic clock is complete in utter silence. It has no gears, no pendulum, no clicking, and no ticking. Its work is done in the dark, in a world of perfect vacuum and controlled temperatures. It is a clock that simply is. It is a patient, constant truth in a world of constant change. Its existence feels almost magical, a testament to the fact that the most profound order lies in the smallest, most fundamental parts of reality. The impact of this clock was as quiet as the clock itself. We don't see it, but we feel it everywhere. It is the invisible force behind our modern world. It gives the internet its precise timing, ensures that our phones have perfect reception, and most importantly, it powers the GPS satellites that guide planes, ships, and cars with pinpoint accuracy. The atomic clock is the unseen backbone of global order, a silent and unhurried presence that allows the fast, chaotic world to function with perfect harmony. This clock taught humanity a final, ultimate lesson in time, that the most reliable rhythm is not found in a grand motion or a complex machine, but in the smallest, most constant part of existence. It showed that when we stopped looking for a rhythm and started listening to the one that was already there, we could achieve a level of certainty never before imagined. For all the unhurried progress of timekeeping, from the grand motion of the sun to the invisible pulse of an atom, there was one final step to be taken. This step was not a technological leap, but a quiet revolution in how time was presented. The clock was stripped of its gears, its hands, and its voice. In their place, a simple, silent, glowing number appeared. This was the era of the digital display, and with it, time became both everywhere and nowhere at once. Imagine a world that was always in motion, full of ticking and chiming clocks. Then, the silence arrived. The narrative of this chapter should focus on this sudden, profound quietness. On a bedside table, a clock no longer makes a sound, it simply glows, a constant, reassuring presence in the dark. The time is not told by a hand moving to a new position, but by a number that simply disappears and is instantly replaced by another. The transition from one moment to the next is now a seamless, almost unnoticeable electronic jump. This new way of telling time changed our relationship with it. Time was no longer something to be watched as it moved. It was something that simply was. The digital display is a cold, objective truth. It does not tick faster when you are late, or slower when you are waiting. It simply shows you where you are in the unhurried march of moments. This clock is everywhere on our phones, our microwaves, our cars, and our computers. It has made time a constant, ubiquitous companion, a background presence that we rely on without ever truly noticing its quiet work. The chapter should reflect on the paradox of the digital display. It is the most efficient and precise form of timekeeping, yet it is also the most impersonal. It has removed the physical connection to the passage of time, the gentle fall of sand, the melodic chime of a grandfather clock, the rhythmic swing of a pendulum. It has replaced them with a series of glowing numbers that tell a truth without telling a story. This final clock taught us that the unhurried march of time is an eternal constant, regardless of how it is presented. Whether it is told by a moving shadow or a static number, time continues its patient, one-way journey. And in the silent glow of a digital clock, we are reminded that even in our fast modern world, the most fundamental rhythm of all is a deep and quiet pulse. The journey through the history of time is not a race to a finish line, it's but a slow, unhurried walk through an endless present. We have traveled from the first hints of dawn to the silent glow of a digital display, from the humble shadow of a stone to the precise vibration of an atom. Yet, after all the calendars, clocks, and chronometers, the most profound truth remains the same as it was at the beginning. Time is a gentle, patient, and unending river. Imagine a single moment, not a minute or a second, but the feeling of being. Right now, the narrative of this final chapter should focus on this singular idea. All the clocks we have built are not time itself, but are quiet human attempts to understand it. The sundial taught us that time is a consequence of light. The hourglass taught us that it is a beautiful, finite journey. The pendulum taught us that it has a perfect, steady beat. And the atomic clock taught us that its fundamental rhythm is found in the very fabric of the universe. And yet, despite all this knowledge, time itself remains a beautiful mystery. The world outside our clocks continues its unhurried pace. The sun will rise again tomorrow, regardless of what our clocks say. The moon will continue its patient cycle. The tides will flow in and out, and the seasons will follow one another in a slow, eternal dance. This final chapter is a return to the quiet, peaceful moment of being present. It is a reminder that the most important time is not a number on a display or a chime in a hall, but the feeling of the sun on your face, the sound of a loved one's voice, and the simple, quiet act of breathing. It is the realization that even in a world obsessed with speed, the most profound moments happen at an unhurried pace, The story ends as it began, with the sun setting, its final light painting the sky with colors of gold and orange. The air cools, and the world prepares for the quiet rest of the night. A person, perhaps the same one from the first chapter, looks up at the sky. They don't see a complex clock. They see a beautiful, infinite journey. They feel the deep, quiet rhythm in their bones and know that for all the clocks we've built, the truest one of all lives within us, and in the unhurried, patient cycle of the world, the end. Our journey is now complete. From the first dawn that woke the world to the patient, unending present we live in now, we have seen that time has always been a gentle, quiet presence. The story of timekeeping is not just about our tools, but about our journey toward understanding a rhythm that is more powerful and far more peaceful than any we could create. As you drift off to sleep, or simply find a moment of peace, remember that the truest clock is the patient beat of your own heart. May you find comfort in the stillness. Good night.